The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library.
Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it's still good news. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own. Yes, the rich get strong while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets never make the grade. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own. Money, you've got lots of friends hanging around your door, but when the money's gone.
We're going to start, this idea grew out of last summer, the idea for Fort Wayne to have a day for Anthony Wayne. I am not a fan of Anthony Wayne, and it upset me. Yes, I have many editorials blasting Anthony Wayne in the name of this city, so. So out of that, I thought, let's do something for somebody who actually helped people. And Miss Virginia came to mind. Miss Virginia was a friend. I used to go to her house sometimes for business, like you'll soon see her in a documentary Jamie Speed and I shot in 1990 called 1,000 Points of Night. I'm showing the opening 2-minute introduction song, God Bless the Child, so it really sets the tone. And then Miss Virginia speaks for about 5 minutes. And she starts out and says it's a peaceful existence. So what a nice antidote to Anthony Wayne, a peaceful existence. And then my own lack of mobility of getting older and having problems made me realize what I always realized, but all the more, that people need help. And you don't have to be physically have problems. We all need help. And Miss Virginia symbolizes, I think, to everybody here, certainly a woman that devoted her life to helping others. And she was just so, you go to her house, which is now still where the food pantry is. And I just want to say that Joe Miller told me, just recently retired as director, that the day before Thanksgiving, the food pantry served over 600 families in 3 hours.
Wow.
And these people that are keeping the food pantry going are keeping Miss Virginia's legacy alive. So let's just start with giving them a hand. I know there's Joe Miller's here, Tony, Leon, if there's anybody else. Thank you all very much for your work and what you're doing. And the idea behind today is just to expand Miss Virginia into the community, to have more people have an opportunity. So I called it Gathering Ideas for Miss Virginia Day. And we have 6 ideas that have been presented but we're open to any, and so this is just a brainstorming day. So let's just start with the star of the show, and my friend, and Miss Virginia died in 1998 at the age of 91. Virginia Schrantz, a retired nurse who opened her heart and her home to anybody in need over on South Hannah Street. So this is 7 minutes from 1,000 Points of Night. Thank you.
Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it's still good news. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own. Yes, the rich get strong while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets never make the grade. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own. Money, you've got lots of friends hanging round your door, but when the money's gone and the spending ends, they don't come no more. Rich relations and such offer crust of bread. You can help yourself, but don't take too much. Mama may have, and Papa may have, and God bless the child who's got his own, who's got his own.
It's a peaceful existence, and if people would share their food, go to their cupboard and get something out to share with somebody, I'm sure that they'd feel better. You know, we get Elmhurst High School each Christmas has a collection for us, which is really a large collection. And when I look at food like that to give to people, I feel like I've eaten a full meal myself. So,
where do you get your money, like when you buy the
well, it's just
food?
by donations. We get along on just voluntary contributions. So
you think that?
But I'm sure if people would wonder about being hungry, or maybe go hungry themselves, or maybe eat only one meal a day themselves, just to see how it feels to be hungry. There should be some way. This would be nice if all the churches had. Of course, the churches help where we don't know maybe about, but like St. Charles, if this would be part of their church service, you know. With the early Christians, their offertory was food that the people brought, and the minister took what he needed for himself, and the rest was given the blessing, blessed it, and was distributed among the needy people. And this is the way they didn't ask Caesar for anything, and they helped each other. They took care of each other when they were sick, and they helped each other repair wherever they lived, you know, and and do all the things. They didn't ask Caesar for money to do anything with. And so this is a good thing to learn something about the early Christians and maybe try to copy.
Do you think some churches have forgotten?
I don't know what it is. I don't really know. I guess if you'd approach the churches, this would be a good thing for you to do, to approach the ministers and the priests and ask them questions, real pointed questions, about where the money. Now, I feel that Christ Church will be, the real church will be, if the ministers and priests live like the apostles in Christ lived among the people, and not have any more than the people, not have any more possessions than the people. Now, I don't know, that would be a revolution in the church, but maybe that'll come. I think that'll come before the end of time. I think before the end of time I will find the real.
That is happening in
It's happening now.
churches, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It's happened, yes. It's happened there. A bishop who was there, he didn't want a metal staff or a gold staff. He wanted a wooden one. And he didn't have any ring to kiss. And there's some interesting things about the churches in these countries where they're really getting back to Christ. They live in, this one moved out of his mansion and left that to be put into apartments for people who needed housing. And he lived in a little hut among the people. He lived like the people live. So this is, yes, it's getting there gradually. It's a slow process, but...
Do you feel the government has any role?
I don't know. The government, this is Roger, who's been to the soup kitchen, and he sit here and eat his soup. This is, you might get your picture taken, Roger. Here.
No, I can't because I don't want to take it.
You don't want it? All right.
I don't like that at all.
All right. Now, is these things you're bringing?
Carol, I could, it's all frozen stuff.
Oh, I see. You can just set it in the kitchen then.
I need paper towel, please.
Yes. Roger.
Where's the front of the TV?
Yeah, we're working with Channel 6.
Oh, 6?
Some other groups.
Oh, that might have been 21, I didn't know.
No, not 21, so...
Well, as I said, we shot that, I think it was 1990. We screened the entire documentary 1 hour at IPFW for the public. Miss Virginia attended. And some of the other places, we went to a snake handling church in River Haven, migrant camp in Bluffton. But Miss Virginia is the centerpiece of the entire documentary. I want to introduce the people that I invited, and everybody's welcome. That doesn't mean their ideas are any better, but they all have some experience with Miss Virginia. We've Tony Henry. Tony has a business, very famous, popular business in Fort Wayne. Sells alcoholic beverages. Occasionally, right? Okay. But other things too. And I myself have been there, and I like it a lot. Anyway, Tony is on the board of Miss Virginia Food Pantry. So Tony, welcome.
Thank you.
Leon Young-Peter is the president of the board of Miss Virginia Food Pantry. There's Leon.
Yep.
Thank you, Leon. Joe Miller, who I first met this summer, and here he is still with me. And I really want to thank Joe, because without his support and his saying, well, it's a great idea, and I don't know if we'd be here today. So thank you, Joe. He just recently retired as the director of the food pantry. The new director is Greg here.
Right here, Greg's right here, yeah. Right here.
Oh, Greg, hi, thank you. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet. Greg Whitty is Joe's replacement. You have big shoes to fill, I know that. And
here's another member from our board.
Okay.
Her name is Peg Schilb.
Hi,
and
Peg.
She's going to do a lot of fundraising for us.
great.
And another one here, Leon.
Yes.
Francie.
And Francie Hogan.
Yeah, Francie
Francie,
Hogan.
With her
nice to
husband
meet
Tim.
you.
With her husband Tim.
Yep.
And from the community, we have my great friend Edith Kinna, who wrote one of the best profiles of Miss Virginia, and she's never even met Miss Virginia. I'm jealous because it's better than anything I've written about her. So thank you, Edith. And Marcy Lawson, who has an idea to convert the old Emmaus Church, where my family, we were members of Emmaus Church on Broadway, to get, I guess, the city or somebody with a lot of money to buy the church. We don't know how much it costs or even who's selling it, but we know it's vacant. Been vacant for quite a while, several years at least. And to convert that into a homeless shelter for women. And there is not one in Fort Wayne. And that, to me, would be the perfect testimony to Miss Virginia. That's my favorite of the ideas. And of course, it doesn't have to be the Emmaus building. It could be any big building. So anyway, that's what we're here for. And Michael Floyd, you heard, Michael Floyd is the founder, director of Windsong Pictures. Does great things with kids, helping kids learn how to make movies, has kids in movies. He started this as a teacher at Elmhurst High School. That's where I first heard of Michael, before I met him. And I heard from Joe, Michael, that you were in charge of the assembly. Miss Virginia spoke of that in the interview, the assemblies at Elmhurst. So he can tell us a little bit about that, the reaction of the kids, etc. Do we have somebody from NeighborLink? Jeff, are you here? Jeff, thank you. Jeff Shadow from NeighborLink. That's an organization that helps people. You sign up and they'll match you with people, and they'll come out and do all kinds of things. They last year they helped me, let's say help, they did it. They raked the leaves for me, so thank you for that. And he does this for a living, so I thought he'd have some expertise to share with us. And I see Myra McFarland. Myra used to be a reporter for the Journal-Gazette. And she wrote, I just became aware yesterday, that she wrote a profile of Miss Virginia. And it was so, she said, well, I'll let her tell you about it. Let's just start with that. Go ahead, Myra.
This is from 1988, so I was only 11 when I wrote it.
Holy cow.
Okay, I lied. The rather odd thing that happened when I got back to town, because I left town soon after this was published, came back and the features editor at the Journal-Gazette came up. Guess what happened? Guess what happened? You remember that story you wrote about Miss Virginia? Yeah. Well, I think all of us in this room are old enough to remember Paul Harvey, who had a national radio show broadcast out of Chicago. Mm-hmm. Somebody in town sent to Paul Harvey this article, and he read it on national radio. So Miss Virginia did get a national audience. And I want to say that that woman, tiny little woman, is one of the 2 or 3 or 4 most impressive people I have ever met in my entire life. And I am thrilled that I got to know her, if only for an hour or two one afternoon. So I hope that this organization, this group of people, put together some really wonderful memorial for her, and get a CityLink bus and fill it with food and drive it around the city and have people come out and put a can of tuna in it and help her work in that fashion. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And Bill Duffy, is he here? From St. Francis. And you heard Miss Virginia say if we could be hungry for a day, we'd know more, have more sympathy for, I'm paraphrasing, she said it better, but for what it means to be hungry. Well, Bill spent a night homeless, and I thought one of the objects I want to do today is there's a lot of people who don't understand the joys that you get from volunteering. Miss Virginia told me that you feel better when you help other people. So Bill, would you share a little bit what that night meant to you and explain it? Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Duffy, and I work at the University of St. Francis. And I am a Franciscan. I joined the order several years ago. And as such, we are trained as Franciscans to be on the lookout for opportunities to help. And so this fall, while doing nothing more than wasting time at work, perusing Facebook, don't tell anyone I did that, but I ran across a post that had been put up by the Fort Wayne Rescue Mission, offering us a chance to have one night without a home. And so I jumped on that because that sounded like something that would be an opportunity to help, to have an experience and to help. And so I set up a little fundraiser on Facebook and ended up raising, I think it was $300 that we raised. That was by no means the most of the folks that participated, but it got me the chance to have the experience and so on October 25th, which is a Friday night, we gathered at the Karis House, which is the women's facility of the Fort Wayne Rescue Mission. Can I ask before I go any further, have any of you done this? Have any of you done one night without a home? Well, I'm not trying to talk you into doing it, but I just want to tell you what it meant to me. We gathered about 6 o'clock and parked our cars actually just a block or two away at the university's, what used to be the Scottish Rite, now it's the Goldstein Performing Arts Center. And then we caught a shuttle down to the Karis House, which is just a couple blocks away on Wells, right across from the park. And so we set up shop, and I checked in, and the gal said, "Do you have a tent?" I said, "No." And she said, "Would you like a box?" And I said, "Yes." There were folks that brought tents. We were given the option to bring tents. And there were people that brought tents. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I had no idea that there were tents that nice. I mean, there were tents that had like rooms. I mean, it was really pretty interesting tents, much different than what I remember a tent being. But that was fine. I didn't want to do that, just simply because I wanted to have as authentic an experience as I could. So she said, "Well, the boxes are over here." So I went over and picked a box that I thought would work. I didn't want to spend a lot of time going through the boxes, and quickly realized I had no idea what I was doing. She had said to me, the gal that had checked me in had said, "We have duct tape here if you need it." I didn't know what you needed duct tape for. So I picked a box. I actually brought show and tell. I'm going to go up here so I can show you this stuff. I picked a box that was pretty much like this one. And the thing that you see is that it obviously doesn't stand up. So I thought that must be what you need the duct tape for. So I got some duct tape, and pretending like I was, like I knew what I was doing, I started applying duct tape to like corners and tops and bottoms, and just simply could not get this thing to stand up. And realized from looking around that I didn't have what I needed. But in order to make this work, you need a box that has an end. And so what I did was to go back to the box pile, humbly, and selected a box that had an end in it, and then was able to take my box, these aren't the right size, the ones I had were the same size, and slide it in here, and tape them together, and make a fine box. What it taught me, what the whole experience taught me, was that there were things about being homeless that obviously I didn't know. When we were there that evening, there was actually a program. There were several folks that spoke. One gal spoke about her experience of homelessness based on the reality that she had dealt with terrible alcoholism. But the guy that stuck in my mind the most was a guy who actually identified himself as a junior. He's currently a junior at Indiana Tech, getting great grades, doing fine today. He's not homeless anymore. But several years ago, he was homeless. And he told the story that at one point in time, he was sleeping in dumpsters. And in my arrogance / stupidity, I remember thinking, why would you sleep in a dumpster? Why would you do that? The night that I was there on Friday night, October 25th, sleeping in my box, was a practically perfect night to do something like this. There was no wind, there was no rain, the temperature got down to 36 degrees. I had told people, I know how to do this, you know, I'll be fine. My sons tried to talk me out of it. I said, I know how to do this. I was a paper boy. When you're a paper boy, you learn how to deal with the weather. So I said, I know how to do this. The very next night, October 26th, I'm not from Fort Wayne, I'm from Columbia City. And in Columbia City, that was the night that was designated as trick or treat. It was the Saturday before Halloween. I don't know why, but it was. There were lots of towns and cities that had trick or treat scheduled for that night, but canceled it because the weather was terrible. But for reasons that I, again, don't understand, we didn't cancel in Columbia City. So I was sitting on my porch that night at home, rain blowing sideways, cold wind, not very many trick-or-treaters out, and the ones that weren't out didn't seem to me to be having a very good time. Their costumes were wet, they were cold. I'm not sure the candy that I was putting in their little pumpkins was worth it. And while I was doing that, I heard a little voice say, this is why. This is why that guy slept in a dumpster. Because on a night like this, I don't know that there is a box out there that's going to make it possible for you to get a good night's sleep. So if you can find a dumpster that you could survive in for a few hours and get in there and shut the lid, that may actually be your best chance to get a good night's sleep that night. And I remember thinking, all of a sudden, that dumpster idea looks pretty good. The experience helped me have, I think about these folks every night. Not long after that, I was in early November, I don't know if you remember this, there was a real cold snap that came through. I was in Omaha. Wind chill 2 degrees. I remember thinking, what are they doing tonight? How are those folks sleeping tonight? You know, on a night when it rains, on a night when it snows, I think about them every night. So having a one-night experience like that probably doesn't seem very much, but it was a real opportunity for me to learn about what it's like for them and to have a connection with them that I certainly wouldn't have had before. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Michael, would you tell us a little bit about the assembly at Elmhurst? Because obviously it meant a lot to Miss Virginia and what happened at the assembly and so forth. Thank you. Michael Floyd.
Wait for your mic.
Hello. I had a couple of degrees from St. Francis along with my wife. Windsong Pictures. It's been around for over 50 years. It actually started long before my tenure at Elmhurst High School. We started in northern Michigan. I brought my map with me. Right there, that's where we started. And we really took off, really took off beyond my wildest imagination at Elmhurst. And over the course of time, we filmed in every state in the country and a few other countries. We've worked with over 250,000 kids and over 45,000 adults. And someone who has really catapulted us into an entirely different league was the son of Mrs. Lawson, Kurt, who's now out in California doing film things. At any rate, so we do a lot of things to promote a lot of nonprofit organizations. So I was at Elmhurst for 20 years, from 1990 to 2010. And Joe Miller was at Elmhurst from 1971 until 1991. And I've known him since 1961, because his brother and I were best friends in high school. And Leon Youngpeter, I've known him since 1962. He was my health teacher at Central Catholic High School. I still remember all the bones, Coach. And Leon also was at Elmhurst as assistant principal for a year, and then he came back as principal for a while. So we have Elmhurst experience. Elmhurst consecutively had 42 consecutive years of food drives. 42 consecutive years, which was incredible. So when you talk to Elmhurst people about food drive, that becomes really a dominant subject. We're doing a production right now called Elmhurst, tracing Elmhurst from 1929 and its origins till the day we closed in 2010. Phenomenal, fantastic stories, things that just rocked the educational boat. And Arlene Zumbrum, who was the principal there for 8 years, always said Elmhurst is the best kept secret around, and she was so right. Just one example. In 2010, when we closed, the robotics team at Elmhurst were the world champion robotics team. World champion. They created a robot that was able to delineate, to decipher recycling. What is aluminum? What is metal? What is paper? What is cardboard? What is this plastic? What is that plastic? It could do all that stuff. World champions. But you know what? That great achievement and accomplishment was lost. What was the headline? Elmhurst closes. That was the headline. But anyway, on the 29th of March, we're going to be screening that at the high school that is still standing, that is closest to where Elmhurst was, and that's at Canterbury. Why? Because the principal of Canterbury High School was a graduate of Elmhurst High School, and besides that, he's my son-in-law. But you didn't hear that from me. So what happened at Elmhurst in those 42 years? What happened was, Grandma and Grandpa participated in the food drive, as well as Mom and Dad and the kids, and it just kept moving. And Maria Herrera, who was on the Fort Wayne Community School Board, was gun-ho food drive when she was a student at Elmhurst. And when her little sister, Christina, came along, she said, I want to outdo Maria. And probably did. So it just grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. I can remember my longtime food drive partner, who can't be here today, but we talked about this meeting before I came. We were across the hall from each other for years and years and years. And we would have this little unsaid competition as to whose room was going to have the most food. You could walk into Floyd's room, and there would be over 10,000 food items. You could walk into Murtis's room and have over 10,000 food items. And you know what that guy did? He had different ways in which he would conjure students to bring in food. One of them was called the Dirty 30. Joe knows what that is. The Dirty 30 is if somebody said a bad word in the classroom, he'd just put their name on the board. And they had a choice, either spend 30 minutes with them after school or bring in 30 cans. The Dirty 30. Yeah, it worked. It worked, yeah. And then Matt's room was larger than mine. He would say to his kids, Floyd's running out of room over there. You should bring all your food over to my room. But it was amazing because we kept the food in the room. And it became just, magic because kids wanted to keep building and building the pile. So this room, you can imagine, just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Finally, the day that we had to move everything down to receiving and load up the trucks. Gee, I didn't know this room was that big. Wow. So I started working with Miss Virginia in 1966. I'd worked with a couple of priests and did Canadian missionary training up in Donna House and that sort of thing. And they said, you need to go to Miss Virginia. So I did. And I was just amazed at this woman. She was a living saint. A living saint. She wrote a letter about me. I need a letter of recommendation. And it's the most marvelous letter in the whole world. I was so humbled. And you know what the problem with the letter was? I have to live up to that letter. Holy cow. Did she know how to write? Just put it right where it needed to be. But at any rate, so I first come to Elmhurst in the early 90s, and then we got to the day of bringing all the food in. But in those days, we brought the food to the gym floor. And they just kept coming and coming and coming and coming, and piles and piles and piles. We would have these huge box trucks, and I remember one year we just didn't have enough. Also, she gave away clothing, right? So we brought clothing in too. So one year, the assistant principal said, a box truck is just not going to be big enough. We're going to bring in a semi. And so how do you load all that food from the gym? You get lined up with kids and teachers, shuffling. And next thing you know, you got that semi full, and we go down to Miss Virginia's and then unload it. Yeah.
And that was a problem.
Yeah.
Where do you put it?
Where do you put all that food? Because it's much smaller than it is now, and even now it would not be enough to handle all that.
Right.
Yeah. So then we got involved because this woman named Manju said, Leon Youngpeter needs some food for the food box program from St. Mary's. So only 1,000. Well, we'll spare 1,000. The next thing you know, next year, well, we need a little more. I remember one year, they brought a truck for Miss Virginia's, and they brought a truck from St. Mary's, and Leon's got the St. Mary's truck. And it comes time, we get everything loaded up, and Leon's ready to take off, so he's stuck. The engine won't start on the truck. Now, I said I've known Leon a long time, but I've never seen him so frustrated as that day because the truck wouldn't start. And then the bad thing was, school was out. Bang, kids are gone. So I went down and I got on the PA and I said, any warm bodies that are in the building, could you please come down? And so U-Haul brought another truck. And the girls' basketball team, they changed back into their regular clothes, and we made a U, and we went from one truck to the next truck, we got it all in there, and away we go. But the other problem was, at 3 o'clock or something like that, there was going to be a group to unload the truck. Well, they weren't there. So anybody want to go down to St. Mary's and we'll unload them? So we have a lot of adventurous stories dealing with food and food drives. And one of the things that we have done at Windsong Pictures is that we raise fresh food in the warmer months. One of the great things about Miss Virginia's, if you don't already know, you probably already know, a lot of food pantries just have non-perishable food items. Not Miss Virginia's. You have non-perishable food items, but you also have fresh items. They're going to be fresh produce and fresh fruit and fresh meat, and sometimes there's fish and sometimes there's eggs, and all those kind of things. We're talking a balanced kind of meal, not just macaroni and cheese, Monday through Friday. At any rate, I only talk in 25-minute sentences, so I better end that sentence and give somebody else a chance.
Thank you, Michael. I think we've established the greatness of Miss Virginia. I have one quote I'll share, and then let's get into brainstorming some ideas. Edith, you want to say something?
I'd like to say one thing.
You need a microphone.
I do? That would be weird. I just want to say one thing. I'm a LCSW social worker, and in the late 80s I worked at Mental Health Association with Ruth Ann Sprunger. I think everybody in this room remembers Ruth Ann Sprunger. And Peg Larson, who is my best friend, and where is she? But she worked with Ruth Ann, and Ruth Ann and Peg were pretty much our contacts with Miss Virginia because she was so serene, we didn't want to overwhelm her. And Ruth Ann and Jerry Henry, who was at that time the director of Catholic Charities. But I want you to know what we did is work with the mentally ill. And so, and people who were in need of hospitalizations, we worked with the families. I have to tell you how many times there would be someone for whom we didn't have a bed in the hospital. and they would stay with Miss Virginia. Now, these were people who were usually psychotic, okay? We didn't ask them to stay with Miss Virginia. A lot of times, when someone's psychotic, you want to think they're afraid, okay? They're not out to kill you. They are afraid. And if you prompt the wrong thing, you're going to get a blow up. They would find their own way to Miss Virginia's. Now, that's how well known she was in the community, and she would take care of that person until we could get them in the hospital. The police didn't go get them. We knew where the person was. And to think that she would also do this, it just wasn't food. She was a wonder. I want to say also that when she went to see Miss Virginia and the Catholic Church brought her there, I thought it was St. Charles, but I'm not sure. Someone who was on the city council at that time, who was a friend of mine, also met Miss Virginia and Mother Teresa and said, God, they're so ordinary. And that is the point. Because we could all do a little of Miss Virginia's work and Mother Teresa's work. I want to thank you. And I have copies here of Myra's article. I haven't paid for them yet, and I trust the library will not think I'm going to steal them. Thank you very much, and thank Terry for doing this. This is a wonderful idea for this city at this time. I'm feeling better just by being here.
Thank you, Edith. I actually wrote an op-ed about Miss Virginia, I don't know the year, but in the Journal Gazette. Paul Harvey didn't read it, though. But I'll read one line from it. She told me, because I love it, here's Miss Virginia. She told me, the Pope could feed the hungry just with the money he spends on furnishings in the Vatican. Miss Virginia Schrantz. Tony, do you mind if I share that one-liner of your dad?
No, I love it.
Since Edith mentioned him,
Oh my
I
God.
can't resist.
Oh, I love it, Terry.
All right, well, Edith mentioned Jerry Henry. I've done so many of these shows for so many years, everybody in Fort Wayne's probably been on it. But anyway, one of my favorites, absolute favorites, and this was back in the 1970s, and these shows are all on archive.org, every one of them. And I'm going to show one of them. It can't happen here, a discussion on the Holocaust, soon with a new discussion. But that show was, I thought, fantastic, and it's still timely. And I thought it would be interesting to see what people in the 70s said versus what we say now. But anyway, one of the shows back then, in addition to the Holocaust, was one called Social Workers Are Killing the Family. That was a controversial topic by a doctor in Chicago named Robert Mendelsohn. Robert Mendelsohn came to Fort Wayne to be on Theater for Ideas. I get these little grants from Indiana Humanities and bring these speakers in here. Sidney Harris, the most famous Chicago columnist.
Oh, wow.
Was biggest crowd ever at Theater for Ideas at IPFW. But Jerry has the distinction of my vote for the best one-liner of hundreds of Theater for Ideas. Tony, I gotta ask you, how many children are in your family?
17.
I wanted to be accurate. Okay, 17. Jerry Henry's the father of 17 children. Tony is one of the 17.
I'm Henry V. That's why I own a pub.
Well, when I introduced Jerry on the show, remember the topic, the title is Social Workers Are Killing the Family. He says, Terry, I gotta apologize. I got confused. I thought when you invited me, I thought the title was The Family is Killing the Social Worker. Jerry, of course, was director of Catholic Charities for a long time and a great guy. Great
We
guy.
need a Jerry Henry Day too.
Yeah. We can throw Jerry, and I'm happy to do that too. But anyway, I had to say that since he just mentioned Jerry, and Tony's sitting here, and he had thanked me for that show, and so, anyway.
It was great, Terry, and it came, Terry, I don't know how it came to me. Somehow, it just landed in my lap. This video,
Terry's talking about that he did back in the 70s, it must have been about 2 or 3 months ago. I don't know how it ended up in my lap, but somehow, I don't know if it was through Facebook or whatever, but all of a sudden it shows up, and I'm profoundly moved, emotionally moved, because it was my father. My father's been gone now about 10 years, and my mother just a couple years, not even quite 2 years. But anyway, this video shows up, and like I'm very much similar to my father. Not only do I own the pub, but I'm also a social worker as well, St. Mary's downtown. I've been down there 16 years now, and in an area that's very distressed, as you all know. That whole corridor is very stressed with dysocial needs. But it came, and I was just so moved, Terry. And also, because my father's wit and how funny he was and how he handled this gentleman, Mendelsohn, how he handled him was very tactful. But Terry, but more importantly, you were fantastic in that. I thought, here's this young social worker asking really profound questions, and you were just really cool, Terry, in that whole thing. I mean, really, really cool.
Well, thank you. I was a little younger then, and a lot better shape physically, so anyway, I hope I still got a few lines left, so to speak. But anyway, we have 6 ideas, so let's just get to them, and maybe, Jeff, you can help guide us through how many of these might be feasible with your experience with NeighborLink. But one is, my neighbors help me a lot. Craig and Kellyanne Edwards, I'll give them a little credit right now. And other people in this room help me a lot too. But anyway, they live in Kokomo. This idea is called God's Garage. A man named Tom Smith started it, a mechanic. He has about 30 mechanics volunteering in Kokomo to repair cars for people like that come to the food pantry in need for free. They pay for the parts. And Crossroad Church, a big church in Kokomo, is the sponsor. I talked to Tom. He started out going to the food pantry and telling people, I'll check your fluids and your tire pressure for free, and that's how it all started. And you need a church, and obviously, or some garage to do this. Another idea, which is a lot less money, is for a phys ed class I read about in Iowa. They send kids out into the community to mow lawns, clean houses, gutters, etc., for class credit, instead of sitting in the class every day, day after day, whatever you do in phys ed. I guess you don't sit in phys ed all the time, but anyway, that's a really good idea and one we could get. Jim Ketch, I want to thank Jim, speaking of people who do a lot for me. Friends of Third World, thanks to him we have this show and a grant to do the show, and thank you, Jim. His idea is to have a contest for young kids to give us ideas for Miss Virginia Day. And another one, the mayor of Atlanta raised $50 million to build homeless shelters for homeless people in Atlanta. So those are, and I mentioned the other one. So Marcy, why don't we start with that one? You live in Indian Village, which is close to Emmaus Church. I lived in Indian Village for quite a while. I said I went to Emmaus. Anyway, explain your idea and how it came about, and let's see if it's feasible to make it work. This is Marcy Lawson.
I go down Broadway, I have my entire life, and I noticed the Emmaus Lutheran Church. How many of you have been you've been down Broadway, you've probably seen it, but those of you who haven't, this is the way it's quite large, and it's been vacant for a long time. It had a for sale sign, and I called for this purpose, and it was so expensive that I almost fell over. Used to be a Horizons Academy, I think Lutheran Church sold.
Is that where Creighton comes into Broadway?
Yes, exactly, yeah. So I've always wanted to consider this, and like I said, I called to see how much it was. I kind of remember 1.3 million. It was just something like bizarre. I have a realtor who's trying to find out if the for sale sign is gone, and I'm thinking it's been for sale for so long they're just taking a break. But if this building is not available, this is a good location for people to walk down to the grocery, bus links, everything. It would be wonderful. It has bathrooms and of course has a classroom. But if that's not available, hopefully there's some other old buildings that aren't being used that we could try to find. I know there's Just Neighbors, and there's more need for shelters for families. There's Kara's House for women and children, but there's no, as I understand it, no shelter just for women. And I'm taking care of a woman right now with a 3-year-old child who otherwise would not have a home, and there's no place for her to go if she's not with me. So, for my husband and I. So, there's just a big need, and I know other people are aware of this. So my idea is just to put more effort into trying to find a building, and then work with whoever we can to facilitate that. It's possible to find an old building, and some of those charter schools bought those buildings for like $1 or something really cheap, and then if they're selling them for $1 million, they're going to really make a nice profit for the charter company. But I think there's something out there, and there's a big need for a lot of things. But I think a women's shelter should be really on top of the thing. And thank you to Michael Floyd for helping my son Kurt. He had a great education with Michael and learned the movie business. He's now in the movie business in Santa Monica. So thank you, and enjoyed all the food pantries. Yes.
Marcy, didn't that building used to be a Lutheran church?
Yeah, Emmaus Lutheran. Correct.
Emmaus Lutheran.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just got a lot of possibilities. There was a car in the back the other day, so I don't know if someone's just checking on the building, but it doesn't look like there's much activity. So, we can keep our fingers crossed that maybe there's something could be worked out.
Would you consider that just a house for battered women or for homeless women?
Well, there's a lot of possibilities. Yeah,
single women?
there's certainly housing needs for women, battered women, temporary housing, and I know Kara's House is building on, and I've been over there several times. There's just a much more need.
I think now, the YWCA has recently been purchased.
Okay.
One of the purchasers was my ex-husband's church.
Okay.
In coordination.
Was it on Wall Street?
The one on Well Street. I think their intention, of course that's huge, is for a battered women's shelter. The thing you run up against is, of course, there are fire laws and housing laws and a number of bathroom laws when you put a lot of people in one place. Now, one would assume both of these places had been charter schools. I don't know. I think that the YWCA is more run down. I don't know where they are on that. Of course, if you're going to do for battered women, that's also a very clinical problem, okay, in the cycle of violence. So but Marcy is right. We have places for women in this city, but they're specific, like I think the YWCA takes a lot of women out of prison, okay? And I think Hope Alive takes women who are depressed. However, you have to be able to climb stairs and, and sometimes you cannot do that because a lot of times people who need a place to live are sick. You always forget that they are ill. Yeah. So I I don't know where we go. It would seem to me that, of course, now we have a terrible HUD director, and we have a terrible in charge of the housing czar or the director, that we have a terrible person. So usually it's a match of federal and local funds. That's how it works. So I don't know, but it certainly is a need. That I can tell you.
Right. I was telling Leon that and he may know who this woman is. I've worked with a homeless woman over the last 6 years. We come upon each other in interesting ways all over the city. I've had her for breakfast. I've had her for lunch. I've had her for dinner. I've had her. I found her shelter. I know where she's living right now, but I have found her all over town, and it's just a synchronicity that works in, I call it angelic ways, because every once in a while she said, I've been praying and you showed up. And I said, here I am. You want to go to lunch? And I have a few friends who have found her for me, but I first found her on Bluffton Road, and I've seen her all over town. But I mean, I've just met her all over town. She does have some delusional parts about her, and I explain to people this way. If I take her, I took her to Clara's the last time we ate out, and we sing songs together. We've sung here, and we sing Frere Jacques, and she's taught me some French because she knows fluent French. She's from Cameroon. Some of you might know her. Her kids went to Snyder, so I know a little bit about her. But she seems fine. And when we get in the car for me to take her back, I drop her off at the library, or I drop her off at St. Joe. One time I dropped her off at near Foster Park. But when we make that turn for me to drop her off is when she becomes kind of delusional. Frank Sorrell said, whatever you do, don't take her to your house. That was after she'd been to my house. And he said, we gave her a red sofa once, and she just went completely crazy. And I said, oh, because I have a red sink in my kitchen, and luckily I took her through the living room and she never saw it. But I've been with her when she's seen red, and she has to stop and pray to get past something red. So there's something that prevents her from having a normal life. But she's healthy. She knows she goes to St. Mary. She knows how to take care of herself, and she always looks great, and I always check up on her. And the last time I saw her was just recently on Coliseum Boulevard, and she was hanging. I drove by, and we whipped around, and she was hanging sacks, like grocery sacks, on telephone poles. And by the time we turned around and I went back, and I never asked her what she's doing, so I was hoping she'd tell me, because I was very curious. And she had one of the sacks with her. And while she was talking to me, asking her how she was, because her knees are starting to give out, it looked like there was lettuce in the sack. So I think the homeless woman who was living at Knight's Inn was hanging up sacks to give to people who walk along Coliseum that might be hungry. So that's the kind of people that they are. And to wrap it in with Miss Virginia and going to Miss Virginia's home and just meeting her once, she's such an example. I love the stories of her, and I hope more of them get out. I didn't know about her taking in the patients, so that's extraordinary. Yeah.
Thank you, Marcy. A related idea, well, one is to have an ongoing project, like create a shelter in honor of Miss Virginia, and of course that would be forever. Well, at least until, let's say not forever, until we can get rid of homelessness, period. But the other one is to have a Miss Virginia Day. Her birthday is July 6th. The internet said she was 71. That is incorrect. She was 91 when she died. July 23rd, 1998. She was born in 1906. So July 12th just seemed to me to be a good day for Miss Virginia Day. It is during Three Rivers Festival, and school's out. But on that day, I was thinking that so many groups like the Food Pantry, Neighbor Link, the YMCA, all these groups that do great things to help people, could come together somehow in one day and unite forces, so to speak, and make a day of volunteering. So that's the other idea part of, that I have in Miss Virginia Day. So yeah, I wanted to hear from the Food Pantry, so Tony, go ahead and get a microphone, please.
You know, I met a lady that knew Miss Virginia very, very well. She's a little girl, and she's still living on over there in Madison. Her name's Deborah Butler. Miss Butler, and she's crazy about Miss Virginia's, and she was the one that advocated very much to the city council that we name Hannah Street or Miss Virginia's highway, road, or street, yes. But anyway, I just talked to Deborah a couple weeks ago. She told me something was fascinating, and I'm wondering if we could play into this, Terry. She told me that Miss Virginia loved the Girl Scouts, and she also loved, you know, working with youth a lot. And she told me that the Hipskins had a lake cottage up at Lake Wawasee, and she would take Miss Virginia would take tons of kids, lots and lots of kids, up to Wawasee, and they'd spend the whole day on Wawasee Lake. Good old the Hipskin family, you know the Hipskin concrete, asphalt. Right. Anyway, I'm just wondering, maybe on that day, like on Miss Virginia's Day, maybe, you know, one day a year, since it's in the summertime too, maybe having a day camp or something for the youth, for the visitors who come for our food, who have children. Maybe that could be a day where somehow we could get them to a day camp or a week camp or something, so they can experience the beauty of nature and just getting out and having fun with water and the sun and the trees and the butterflies and camping. Somehow think about that.
No, I like that a lot. I mean,
anybody else?
You're getting kids away from social media, you're getting them outside. Study after study shows the virtue of nature and being outdoors and being relaxed. And for all that we're talking about, Miss Virginia always seemed relaxed, no matter what was going on around her. I mean, that she never really was like tense or, oh my gosh, where's this delivery, or they're late, or just sat there like she was above it all, and you couldn't help but be taken up by it and feel relaxed yourself. And that's one reason I like to go to Miss Virginia's, because I'm not often relaxed, so she made me relax. But anyway, that's a great idea, and that's what today is for. And we maybe should be thinking about a follow-up meeting or how we make this work. So I know the enthusiasm is here. Everybody loves Miss Virginia and seem to like the idea of honoring her in some way, that the community can get involved. Did you want to say something, Leon?
Well, I think Francie's got a next one. No, I want Francie to present her idea.
Okay,
yeah. This is a pretty simple concept. My husband and I went to the art project announcement last week, and one of the ideas that they presented was city murals, and that would be face images on sides of buildings of prominent civic leaders and social justice leaders, and it's a no-brainer that she could be easily portrayed in a portrait, the one we have of her with Miss Mother Teresa, or just that.
A mural.
Put on the side of a building, and it could either be grant funded, which many of the murals will be, which is part of what that presentation was about, or a high school art class project, you know, any single way, but it would be a lasting, whether it could be down where the house is or somewhere in that neighborhood, something like that.
Oh, I like that. And you could unveil it, so to speak, on Miss Virginia Day.
That would be great.
Somebody's going to hand out Patty back there. Okay. Get her a microphone. Thank you. Great ideas. I love that, a mural.
How about having a mural in a Catholic church that she used to go to? Did she go to Catholic? St. Mary's?
Yeah, she
Yeah, she became she became a little bit I think a little inactive in her. There was a little bit of animosity, Terry. She got a little. I think, Terry, and some of you might be able to validate this, but I think as she aged, and you got a glimpse of that in the documentary, this revolution, and she began become very Franciscan. It seemed like in a lot of ways. And I think she almost became a little bit anti-clericalism in church a little bit. I kind of want to think that towards the end of her life, she became a little bit inactive or alienated. Her faith was very strong. Her spirituality was getting stronger and stronger. But as far as the institutional church, she began to back off. Can anybody validate that? That knew her? She broke away from St. Mary's, yes, but she did give her home to St. Mary's, to Father Tom O'Connor. But she began to see the church as being a little. Well, you mentioned the doctor a little bit ritzy, and what question am I answering right now? How did I get onto that topic?
Merle at the church.
Merle at the church. Yeah, so that's what I'm responding to.
So you would not put one there. So where would you?
No, I think it'd be on a building. It'd have to be on the right in the streets, right in the streets. She was right in the, like we see some of these beautiful murals on the alleys and stuff, right there in the streets.
Where everybody can see.
Yeah, exactly.
Would it be like downtown?
Downtown.
Inner city.
Inner city. Excellent.
Somebody, that's the whole idea. We'll get somebody. Myra has one more idea before she leaves.
Well, as a person who is poor and doesn't own a car, I take the bus all the time. Thanks. And you were talking about a mural on the side of a building. What the heck? Put Miss Virginia on the side of a bus. I mean, get rid of some of those horrible Boyer ads.
Yes.
Hey, now we're cooking.
All right.
Thank you, Myra.
Anytime.
Rather than a.
Side of a food truck. Do you hear that?
Yeah. Here, say it again with the microphone, please. Sorry, electronic wonders of the world. We gotta have you mic'd up.
Truck we use every week to pick up and deliver food.
Or even at the I'm thinking even at the viaducts, where we have a lot of homelessness, the viaducts, and and some I think those kind of lend themselves. They're kind of cool. Those viaducts.
Viaducts.
Am I pronouncing it right? Viaducts. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. But something like each they're concrete, but one could be significant social activist over the years, and maybe on each of those walls could be a different person that really was in solidarity with those who are living under the viaducts. Incidentally, Duffy, is it? Duffy, first name Bill? Bill's story, I have to share this with you. Bill Duffy's story about homelessness for a day. I have to tell you, Tim Harmon, a journalist.
I know Tim.
Tim, really cool guy, Tim. And he's semi-retired but still freelancing for the Journal-Gazette. He contacted me about 6 weeks ago and wants to do an article on homelessness. And I have to share this with you real quickly here. Hope I'm not being too windy. But this is kind of cool. So Tim came to me a couple of times, wanted to talk about homelessness and all that. And so to my office at St. Mary's. And so we talked a couple of times. I said, let's go out and meet some homeless. Let's do this. We went across the street to the Ave Maria house, which is a homeless daycare shelter, where Dottie Carpenter, she's another very much another Miss Virginia's in a lot of ways. She is one, Dottie Carpenter. Do you know her, Terry?
No.
Terry, she's aging. She's about 86 right now, but she started the Ave Maria house right across the street from St. Mary's. She's a really cool lady. But anyway, so I said, Tim, let's go across the street to the Ave Maria house and meet some homeless over there. So we went over there, we interviewed a couple homeless folks, and we met this young
middle-aged 30-year-old, 35-year-old gal who's homeless. And Tim and I were talking to her, and we asked her if it was okay if we took a picture of her. She goes, no, I don't mind at all. And then, and I said, I'm just gonna give her a name, Peggy. I'll say, Peggy, where did you sleep last night, Peggy? Where did you sleep last night? Can you tell us? She goes, yeah. She goes, isn't this ironic? She goes, right behind the Journal-Gazette. Here's Tim Harmon,
By the railroad
a
tracks.
journalist for the papers, and Tim's kind of like stunned. And I said, can we? She goes, I live right behind the Journal-Gazette on the riverbank in a tent. And I said, do you mind if we visit your tent? She goes, no, not at all. I'll tell you exactly where it is. And so she told us. So Harmon and I went behind the Journal-Gazette, and we ambled about, and sure enough, there was her tent. We took a picture of it. There she's living, in a tent. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting, Duffy, that we and it's kind of sad. But anyway, there's some things going on too where the city, because of this new riverfront project and stuff, we've kind of discamped a lot of those places, like tell them to look for another spot. You got to go. So anyway, it's a nest. But anyway, that viaduct, I think that would be potentially art. I'm talking about, like right there on Harrison Street, Harrison,
Oh, yeah, right.
Harrison and Calhoun and Harrison and Superior. Those right there,
yeah.
where the courthouses, the jails are. Those right there. We put Mother Teresa there. Terry, we get Duran on one of those. We just move right on down.
Oh, I like that idea. No, thank you, Tony. Go ahead, Marcy.
I work with Sally Becker-Sagerson with Street Reach for the Homeless, and one of the gentlemen that she became acquainted, knew well, who passed away on the streets, was named Cortez Upton. And if you Google him, there's an interview of Cortez from a Chicago interview. He's from Chicago, and it's fascinating to hear his story. He had such a joy about him, and he had been through so much struggle, but it's a really interesting interview. Cortez, I think it's U-P-T-O-N. I went to his funeral. It was very touching, but he had a lot of spirit about him, as so many of them do.
Thank you. I want to hear, Jeff, you do this for a living, right, Neighbor Link? What needs do you see that we haven't discussed that we might bring up or elaborate on some of these ideas? Neighbor Link, first, maybe some people aren't familiar with what Neighbor Link is.
Sure. Well, my name is Jeff Chateau. I'm the mobilization director for Neighbor Link here in Fort Wayne. For those of you who aren't familiar with Neighbor Link, we're a faith-based not-for-profit. We've been around for a little over 16 years. And kind of just to get you a brief idea or understanding of what Neighbor Link is and kind of what we're trying to do. So Neighbor Link, we're basically like an electronic bulletin board, and a homeowner can call us up with any type of home maintenance, home repair type need, and we can take that request and we post it on our website. And by posting the request, it's not any kind of a guarantee. It's kind of like a first step. It's a way for someone to get their need out in front of our volunteer base, and then our volunteers can go to the website and they can self-select a project based on someone's skills and abilities. And a need can be anything from simple yard work, whether it's mowing the grass or in the fall, leaf raking, in wintertime, snow removal, things like that. Or it can be painting the house or cleaning the gutters, or maybe the toilet has a leak, or building a wheelchair ramp, repairing a leak on the roof, or even roof replacement. Last year we did just over 1,400 completed projects. That represents a little over 40% of the requests that we actually get in. So there's almost 60% of the requests that we don't get to. So there's a huge need out there that we're not meeting. But we still, at 42% of completion rate, we still think that we're doing a good job. There's just always room for improvement. So that's just a brief explanation of who we are. Some of the ideas that I heard today, and just to give you some of my quick thoughts. I'm not sure whether they're right or wrong or not, but just kind of my thoughts. So I heard God's Garage, which I like that idea, and that's something that we've considered in the past to kind of put under our umbrella. There is Love Auto Ministry in town that some of you may be aware of, that I think is a great idea. Now they're going at it as a for business under the Love Church Ministry, and I'm sure God's Garage, the idea there would be to provide that as a free ministry, and to get men and women together that have that auto ministry gift, and to give their talent away. The one thing that we at NeighborLink always identify, and we've seen it in at NeighborLink, because someone can call into NeighborLink with an auto type need, and I've seen it where someone calls up and says, I just need my car won't start, and I think it's a dead battery. I just need a jump. And I've personally gone out and tried to start a car with just a jump, and it's never just this. Someone that has just one problem, because they've not maintained their car, it's always problem A, B, C, and D. And that's no different than a homeowner with home repairs. They haven't maintained their house, and so there's more than just one repair. So not saying that the God's Garage isn't a good idea. It's the cars that are going to come in there, they're going to need a lot of work. And I think you'd have to be prepared to address those things. The lawn service and kind of small tasks, there's certainly always a need for that, and I think if you went with something like that, you could use our website to post those requests and kind of use NeighborLink as a tool for that.
Thank you.
You had mentioned a contest for having youth kind of put ideas out, and I like that. I think when you involve youth, it's hard telling what ideas you get, and I kind of like that. So that's a great idea. The homeless shelters, I like the idea of using buildings that are already out there. I think we all know, though, that there's certainly hurdles to get over with that, as far as, where's the money going to come to buy that building? There's certainly a couple big families out there that are into real estate and possibly could be able to help, but and then once you get that component, then there's certainly a lot of challenges after that.
Fundraising?
Who was the person that had the mural idea? Who started that conversation?
Thank you. I was more
I liked that idea. And you had mentioned like grant dollars to pay for that.
Well, it's in conjunction with the city, so we kind of have to throw the idea back to them and then be guided by what the response could be.
The one thought that popped into my mind on that is, like, rather than seeking grant dollars or city dollars, I think that there's enough interest in the community because of who it's for. Like me personally, I would be happy to contribute my personal dollars, and
I just want the city publicity, the city marketing.
But definitely. But I think more along the lines of like GoFundMe, because I think
wouldn't even need any money.
Well, you definitely need to raise some dollars, but So that was just my thought there. And even though I like the idea of like putting it on a bus or a food truck, I like more the permanent because it's more lasting.
How does Neighborhood Links survive?
Get a microphone.
Donations?
You need Yeah, so.
You can just repeat my question.
Sure. So our funding, how we survive, it's through grant dollars and private donations.
Really?
Yes. Okay. And so I had mentioned for the first 16 years, so we've been around 16 years. I've been on staff. I'm just starting my 7th year. When I came on staff, I was the second full-time person. So in front of me, it was a one-person operation until I came on board and was the second person. And right now, I think we're a staff of 7 or 8 full and part-time people. We've actually got 2 AmeriCorps Vista people with us right now. They're 1 year full-time people, and then 5 or 6 NeighborLink staff, and again, those are full and part-time people.
The city pays for that?
No, we're a faith-based, not-for-profit. We're not.
Salaries and everything, or?
Right. We seek out our own support, grant funding, and private support. And when we do projects, the ideal situation in our projects, some of our projects don't require any funding, but then, for example, with it being heating season, we're trying to help people with repair and replace their furnaces. So I've actually got a budget for that. nlfw.org, which stands for neighborlinkfortwayne.org. And so we sought out and raised our own dollars for our HVAC program. And so I had like $16,000 in our budget to fix and replace furnaces for the heating season. And then I partner with Masters Heating, and they're kind of our professionals that go out and either repair or replace a furnace. And I always challenge a homeowner to contribute something on a repair, but you can imagine if someone, is having a hard time getting along on a fixed income, to replace a $2,000 furnace is a hard thing.
What's your last name?
It's Chateau, S-H-A-T-T-O.
Jeff, are you modeling this? Are you modeling this from any other cities out here? This whole
So about 8 years ago, we saw the value of offering our web platform to other cities. And so in Indiana, we've got NeighborLink DeKalb County, Porter County, Adams County, Indianapolis, Evansville, and then there's a couple scattered throughout the U.S. But it all started right in Fort Wayne. Yes.
I was going to ask Terry, Dorian, and I, throughout the years, we put on fundraisers with groups coming to sing without we paying for them. It's all volunteer, donating their time. Would you do that? A fundraiser with groups of singers that are quite popular here in Fort Wayne?
So for fundraising, we try and do things that are a little bit different that other volunteer organizations aren't doing. Just this past September, we had an Addison Agan concert, and that's the first time we ever kind of ventured into that area, and not knowing what we were doing. It was mildly successful. That's the first time we ever did something like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, we've had a lot of
We've had a lot of results for most of our fundraising. especially with the singers, and they did excellent jobs. The singers like Fatima, Washington, and other people like Sonny Taylor and all that. They can bring in good amount of people.
Yeah, so we're always trying to just do different things for fundraising. We raised, so that night at the concert, we had made a video prior to that evening highlighting a particular neighbor in need of replacing her roof, and that was going to cost $7,000. So to hire a contractor to do that work, not with volunteers. And so we actually raised $7,000 just through giving to pay a contractor to do her roof. And so within a week and a half of that concert, we had a new roof on her house. So those are just different ways that we raise funds to do projects.
Thank you. It's interesting your hard work, you still have half the people who apply that you can't get to. That's why I talked to Tom Smith at God's Garage. They repair cars on Wednesday nights and Saturday. He said you have to have a church or some organization to sponsor you. They pay the utilities, the insurance, and liability and all of that. I hear it's a big church. And they're getting a new building. He was going to come today, but they're working on the new building. If there's enough interest, I'm pretty sure I could get him to come here and speak to us. But he started it, and what reminded me is he said they can't get to everybody. He says we're about 100 people out. That's the great need. They just can't get to everybody. They repair about 6 cars on Wednesday nights and Saturdays. And also another thing you said, that when they have a problem like the battery, it's never just the battery. It's always something else. Sure. You know, and that poverty is a downward spiral. You can't drive your car, you can't get to work, you lose your job. I was a social worker. I've seen that happen. I've been poor myself, so I know what it means to have a car that you can depend on to get around. So we're going to have to wrap up. Greg, you haven't said anything, and I haven't called on you. So Greg's the new director, and I'm sorry Joe had to leave, because Joe was the instigator with me of this idea, but he has family coming. But anyway, Greg's the replacement.
Yeah, I'm 2 months into the director over there at Miss Virginia's. 2 months into the director over there at Miss Virginia's. Okay. I had a passion to, after I retired, to get into working, doing volunteer work. I knew Leon from my high school days as my competitor as basketball. I went to Lures, and he was the coach. But when I first started, when I first started getting into it, I get a lot out of it. I see myself leaving there with, while I'm working with a very heavy heart for the people that come through there. I feel like when I go home, I've had a good day's work. I've given back something that to the people that, and I feel good about what I've done. I feel like there's always something I can do to give a little bit extra, and I appreciate what I do. I get up in the morning when I do go on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and other days, and I'm happy to go down there, you know. And the thing that I see is the volunteers that come in, and I've talked to Leon quite a bit about the volunteers. We have volunteers that are down there, and Leon is one of them. But we have volunteers that have 16 years. over 16 years. And what I see is, what I saw was a couple of weeks ago, there's one particular individual, and this little old lady comes walking in, and I didn't know who she was, and she goes up to Joe McGuire, and they hugging each other, and you know, he said that she used to come back, and I don't know how many years she's been coming, and I said to myself, where have we done anything for this lady? So I've talked with Leon. I'm doing something for the volunteers that we have, even the volunteers that are there that come down and work, you know, where we can recognize the volunteers. And I'm talking about just the house itself, the pantry itself, where we can do some things. So there's some things that I'm doing in the works that I'm going to work through with some of the the schools. And Francine, I have some ideas that might go along with what, and I could talk to you what I've come up with. Bishop Loers is coming down for a day and spending with one of their classes, and I'll talk to you with that later. But those are some of the things that so far I've gotten out of it. It's kind of it's new for me. It's a new endeavor for me right now. So I'm learning every week as I go down. So, okay.
Thank you, Greg. We should probably be wrapping up. Should we have another meeting? Well, how we got to keep this going? There's enthusiasm, so we got a lot of ideas, and obviously we can't do all of them. So we're going to have to figure out a way to, like the mural seems to me to be very doable, which could lead to a lot of these other things. You know, it's going to be visible as well.
Well, Terry, if you're talking about doing something to honor Virginia Shrance in July, I think they can hear me, to honor people in July, you probably got to move on some of these things pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Is it this year? You're doing it?
Pardon?
It'll be this year, right?
Well, I was thinking this year, but while we're not going to get everything accomplished by July 12th, but we got enthusiasm now and do something to keep it going. I mean, if you make it to next year, I worry we'll just lose interest.
Yeah. Well, the mural would be a definite possibility.
Terry, you know, I like the idea. I don't really need this.
Here.
I like the idea
of if we're going to exalt these civic, social, activist leaders, that somehow we introduce this to city council and county council about exalting these humble persons who have made a significant impact in our community, and then maybe perhaps tapping into a little bit of the legacy fund to somehow appeal to our city council men and women, and somehow showing them the significance of these individuals, how they've imparted such wonderful values for our community. As we are growing and as the downtown area is really becoming a lot more vibrant stuff, let's not let these folks who have always worked very fervently for the marginalized, also exalting them. And somehow, so I mean, like Terry, like that letter that you wrote, like you've been fighting the Anthony Wayne situation, and it was beautifully done. And it was through literature, through writing, and that's why I mean I cut that article out, and I said, "Gee, Chris, this is powerful. Forget Anthony Wayne. Let's have a Miss Virginia, heroic day of Miss Virginia." And so somehow I think. So let's just. I think that's what we got to do. We got to go through city council and do it the right way.
Well, we have two council members interested, Glenn Hines and Jeff Hanna. They wanted to have an update on what we discussed today and what happened, and so we could start with them, I guess. I mean, I'm not limited to not go to the whole city council. I just meant they.
Yeah, right. Right,
As far
so,
as future plans, can you not utilize that list right there and communicate to everyone?
Yeah, that's why I make sure you sign this. That's what I wanted to do, is to have this to keep in touch with email and phone calls or something. And have another meeting, and again, the reason that I like this year is we at least can get something going. I mean, we're not gonna get a women's shelter built by July 12th. We're not gonna get a mural painted, but we could get it started.
Well, go through the application process.
With the application
Yeah.
and the idea and build
Children
to it
good?
and
Children?
have something to present on July 12th.
Right.
How about children doing a mural? Or young adults?
I'm not sure about that.
No?
There's a lot of talented kids, you know, that could do the mural. I like that idea. That could be another kind of a follow-up on the idea of kids doing an essay. Maybe you can pick kids out to do the mural. That would certainly be a generational thing. The mural seems to be an idea that people like. I mean, I like all the ideas, and I think all of them are worth pursuing. But to keep the momentum going, pick something. Anyway, what's a good day for everybody to meet, like another month from now or something? Like Sunday good, Saturday better, night?
I prefer kind of a weekday night or something. Weekends, I just look
Yeah, I
forward
know.
to.
A weekday maybe?
Weekday, yeah, weekday evening.
All right. Well, we'll just pick a day and hope everybody can come. And even if you can't, now we got the idea going, you can just stay in touch. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to get Joe to talk, but anyway, he said he didn't have a whole lot to say, but I'm sure he does. Anyway, I want to thank everybody. You're all great. Thank you. And we'll get something going for